Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. I'm Reed Price. I'm the director of the center. Very happy to have you here. We're going to be talking about resilience. The Senior Community Center is looking at a capital campaign to raise money to build an expanded center, and we've been looking at resilience, and we will talk about what that means in just a minute. I want to start, though, by acknowledging that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, specifically the Suquamish tribe. Um, the Suquamish have lived on the waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial, and we honor them, and we are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters, and we should be working to be better stewards ourselves. Also, I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which sponsors Something to Talk About. Fieldstone has assisted independent living and memory care upon Rolling Bay. You can find out more about that and their day stay and respite programs by talking with Randy or Jamie. Call 206 594 1010. They'd be happy to give you a tour, treat you to lunch or dinner when you stop by, or just check out their website, fieldstonecommunities.com. So as we work on that expanded senior and community center, we've been reaching out to a number of groups and organizations to get their feedback and input. We've talked with teens, advocates for people with disabilities, the city's Race Equity Advisory Committee, certainly the current senior center membership, our neighbors, and more. And one of the key groups we've reached out to are experts on something called community resilience. And today we're going to talk about how an expanded community center can also be a resilience hub. With us, Consuelo Crow, who is a strategic advisor with the Regional Catastrophic Planning Grant Project through Seattle-King County, Anne LeSage, who is the Certified Emergency Manager, who works with the City of Bainbridge Island, and all of us. So I want to thank you both for being here and taking the time out of your busy day to give us a little bit of information about what it means to be a resilience hub and how having such a thing on Bainbridge Island will benefit all of us who live here and work here as well and visit here probably as well. So Consuelo, I'd like to start with you because you've been working on this quite a while and have maybe perspective with a lot of communities about what's the difference between, say, a severe weather shelter or a disaster hub and a resilience hub.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So in 2022, the Seattle Office of Emergency Management was awarded a FEMA grant for the Regional Catastrophic Preparedness Grant, $1.4 million to invest in frontline communities who are the most impacted by disasters. Particularly, we are focusing in on the catastrophic earthquake. And in my opinion, if you plan for that catastrophic event, you're going to be prepared for most everything else. But never entirely. But through this, we are looking at what a resilience hub could look like in these frontline communities for different people. Currently, we have 14 different community-based organizations that we're working with in 8 Puget Sound counties. And so a resilience hub is going to look different for everybody based on capacity and resources. And so what we're doing is we're exploring the gaps in resources and also taking stock of the resources that are available to them so that we can figure out a balanced plan for everybody. So these resilience hubs, often people think about these brick and mortar sites with like all of the bells and whistles. You know, you have backup generators, you have solar panels, communication systems, but that's not going to be for everybody. However, in Bainbridge Island, we could look at the brick and mortar style where it's community-led, trusted gathering spaces that will connect people and serve people in the immediate and surrounding areas by providing access to services, programs, resources, and other opportunities on a year-round basis. They can be physical locations that are funded and managed by public, private, or nonprofit entities. And each resilience hub is created to serve the unique needs of of that community in which it's serving, based on standalone programming that has buy-in from that community. And we are currently organizing a Puget Sound regional network of all of these different Resilience Hub projects, so that people can collaborate with each other, problem solve together, and potentially um, co-apply for different funding sources among everybody, to fill in those gaps that we have identified. One of the central features of these communities is that they're located with increasing community overall resilience, to ensure that everyone is able to support themselves and each other after, either a smaller event on, these gray sky days, which can be up to that catastrophic earthquake, but also supporting communities during blue sky days when everyday life is happening. And some of this can look like, classes, or places for voting polls, or any kind of programming that fits the needs of the local area and the local community.
Yeah, I feel like I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of other organizations that are doing this, and the effort to try to make it a place where you can already know that you can get information or support before a disaster happens. Um, and so there's that idea that we have to sort of organize as communities. Certainly on Bainbridge, we recognize that we're surrounded by water, and that in the event of a big catastrophic event, it's going to be a while, maybe quite a while, before anybody is going to come and help us. But that's not only true for us, right? That's true for a lot of communities in
This
different
is true
ways.
for Definitely. This is true for a lot of communities, and each area throughout the Puget Sound has its own unique individual concerns to be concerned about, along with the overall regional problems. We have risks from volcanoes and lahars, landslides, tsunamis, earthquakes, all sorts of things, and that's for the larger Western Washington Puget Sound area. But some places are going to be more prone to those bigger landslides, or water inundation, more so if they're closer to the water, or they have riverine areas that flood maybe on an annual basis. So we look at the bigger picture as well as the individual areas, to make sure that everybody knows exactly what they should be focusing on the most. And I wanted to point out, this project particularly is unique because it's being operated through an Office of Emergency Management. We are helping every community that we're working with to develop like a solid plan, which would be submitted to their local emergency management office. And as an emergency manager myself, what that means for us is that if we know how people plan to behave and move after something has happened, we're able to target our resources better and our recovery efforts better.
So that's probably a good moment to bring in Anne LeSage, who helps to manage the emergency preparedness here on Bainbridge. Um, from what Consuelo is saying, what do you see as how a this work on resilience fits into the overall plan for our island?
Yeah, thank you, Reed. Great question. So, as we have moved forward with our different disaster plans for the island, one of the things that we've done, and a lot of our community members are aware, is our disaster hub program. Now, this was originally set up for places that we would activate post catastrophic earthquake. But when the idea of this resilience hub project came up, I immediately thought of the senior center because we have places that are well known and respected and used by our community. And so I think the intersection of understanding locations where people go day to day and having that also be a place where they can go and get help after a major earthquake or other disaster, it just seems like the perfect combination. So while we have 14 disaster hubs on the island, the senior community center is our first that we're trying to build up as a resilience hub. So it is a place that you would go to day for resources, and a place that you would go to after a catastrophic earthquake. So a place that is recognized by the community, used by people of all ages, so folks can go and get help if they have access and functional needs, or counseling, or just connection to one another as a community. So it really is the perfect mix of what we're trying to do. I think separate from, the work around Resilience Hub, part of what we're also trying to do just in general on Bainbridge is build community, right? And physical buildings are often a part of that. It's a place where people come together, get to know one another. So through, Map Your Neighborhood and all of the different initiatives that we have, at the end of the day, our goal is that we know one another. We care about our neighbors. We want to make sure we're prepared and we're working together for minor, that 1-2 day power outage, all the way for the catastrophic earthquake, and then just day-to-day needs. So I think it helps build stronger community all around.
So Consuelo, is that what you're seeing when you're working with other communities to try to find either some brick and mortar, so to speak, locations that are a focus, whether it's a hub itself or whether it's uh, something that's just a location that you can build out into a resilience hub?
This is a great question. There is so much flexibility in this project because everybody's needs and everybody's capacity is very, very different. For example, we have 8 communities that we're working with in Snohomish and Skagit, and they don't necessarily have the ability or capacity to have that brick and mortar site. So, as an alternative, they're able to pool their resources together and start identifying the gaps in their resources and having containers that are filled with what they have. And that way, they will be able to locate a safe site on an ad hoc basis and set up what is a community command center for themselves to start doing the work that they need to do in order to, assess what's going on and get people the help that they need. So there is the Map Your Neighborhood that Anne spoke of. There are a couple of organizations that are doing Map Your Neighborhood on a more localized level with, 2025 surrounding houses, taking stock of everybody's like quotidian household items. What do they have? What can they bring? And how those items can be used in an alternative fashion to support their efforts. And some already have brick and mortar or are looking to identify a brick and mortar site to set something up. And there are a couple of organizations who are looking at like places that these communities already sort of congregate to talk to each other and meet up, like, cafes and things like that. So that is also an option. If there's a community site that is, doesn't seem traditional, that is a place that can also be used.
In our case, we were on the verge of sort of, well, the building that we're in is rather old, and we were recognizing the idea that we are not able to serve the current membership and community as a whole as well as we would like. And so we started to investigate the idea of expanding the community, and let us know about this project and said this is a resource that might be useful, because if we're going to build out something that is designed to be a center place for the community, uh, integrating resilience as part of that seems absolutely natural. So in those cases, you did talk a little bit about some of the things that somebody might think about. I know, Anne, we have talked with members of Bainbridge Prepares, which is the volunteer group here that does a lot of response and readiness for emergencies and disasters. And we've had suggestions about putting like a virtual space that's about the size of one of those trailers that you might have been talking about, Consuelo, in our building, so that it would be right there and accessible to Bainbridge Preparers or the city folks, to make sure that they have the materials that they need in the event of a disaster. Or that, let's say that we have a cold weather shelter and we need to set up a emergency shelter for someone to sleep in. The cots are already here; they don't need to be moved or set up. And then, other ideas that I hadn't really thought about. We have ham radio operators who have volunteered to help when we don't have, um, other methods of communication, when the cell phones go out, when the phones go out. Um, and Pascal Schubach, who works with the Bainbridge Prepares folks, suggested that maybe we could anticipate by mounting a antenna here, even if it's not being used, so it doesn't involve having to ad hoc put up the antenna before you can do any other work. those are the kinds of examples that I'm thinking of, but I'd welcome any other suggestion, not suggestions really, but examples of what you've seen in other communities or things you'd like to see as part of a resilience hub infrastructure, if you could.
Yeah, so in the larger sense, for everybody in the Puget Sound, everybody's looking at different and alternative ways of communicating, whether it's by word of mouth or using, other technologies. I have been for the last few years working on a project here in the city of Seattle for city workers specifically, and it's a type of resilience hub for them after a catastrophic event, and they can't reach their leadership and they can't reach their job sites, or their job site has become unsafe. We have identified 10 spots throughout the city of Seattle that would be in the islanded areas after infrastructure has collapsed, where city workers can go and set up an ad hoc incident command center. And we are putting up antennas at those sites to make sure that our alternative communication system folks will be able to do that alternative communication to the emergency operations center for us, so that we don't lose time, we don't lose information, when trying to assess the damage and the needs of the community.
So I'm interested if anybody who was on the call has a question about what a resilience hub might mean, or what to you this what we're talking about sounds like. I'd welcome you. You can just wave at me or raise your hand. Any way you want. If you have a comment, please don't hesitate to jump in here. We've been working really closely with our architects, and in fact, David just popped up with his microphone off, so I muted him there. But David, I don't know if you have a comment here. I'm going to have to mute you again. I'm hearing your office unless you have a comment to add. But we're grateful to working closely with the architect in this case to try to imagine how a facility might be used on a day-to-day basis as a place to play cards or have a lunch, and then how to think about those same spaces being transformed for an emergency, and thinking about how you can make a quick switch over without having to start from scratch. And one of the challenges with older buildings for sure has been that there are limited alternatives. There are only parts of the building that we can be sure might survive an earthquake, and there are only parts of the building that we know are guaranteed to have heat. So those kinds of things make a big difference. Yeah, so I'm thinking about this as a combination of things. One of the efforts we certainly want to do is to anticipate the needs that Anne might have and the community of emergency responders might have. And I know that we've talked about things like the fact that you might need to have a community kitchen here. You might need to serve food in an emergency. And so how might we imagine how that will lay out? And maybe you might comment a little bit about other kinds of emergency needs like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right now in the current building, the Senior Community Center is our primary severe weather shelter. And so it's our primary location when we have to activate for, cooling and warming centers. We tend to have, a dozen or so days a year where we're activating, whether it's for extreme heat or extreme cold. And the space has been great, but it's always a challenge when, we're coordinating with Reed and Mimi and Mary, and we're like, okay, this is what we're doing, but do we need to cancel activities? Do we take over this space? And we want to be sensitive to not disrupting current programming if we can. And sometimes we've had to, and sometimes we're able to work around the schedule. And as Reed was mentioning, in the new building, we're thinking about how can we have stuff pre-staged. So what are the things that we need to access, like cots and blankets and comfort kits? Do we have more functionality in the bathrooms? Is there a shower? Is there a kitchen that's easier for us to use and be able to prepare? We're not cooking full course 5-star dinners here, but we're providing meals and snacks and hot coffee and tea. And so having a space that's a little bit more functional for the needs of our severe weather shelter is really important. You know, one of the items that has come up is just the need to be able to do laundry when we have our severe weather activation. Right now, we've had a couple of our volunteers just take the blankets home and wash them themselves, but it would be wonderful if we had a washer and dryer on site to make it easier to do that laundry. So even some fairly simple, you know, small things that make the space much more functional is, you know, it's been really good to be able to have those conversations during this design process for the new senior community center.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be a big help with our social activities as well. When we have
Yeah.
100 people, sitting down to a meal with tablecloths and whatever,
Exactly.
instead of people having to take them home, it'd be wonderful to have that capacity on site.
Yeah, so that's an example of that dual use. So the idea of, will it make the center a good ongoing daily operation? And also, will it be easily transitioned to be useful in the event of a severe weather shelter or something more catastrophic than that? Yeah, I can think of what you said earlier, Anne, about keeping programs going. Actually, I think that one of the important things about having a resilience hub is that it doesn't just work as a emergency shelter, but it's somewhere that you can come and recharge your phone or hang out when you're trying to figure out what's going on. In the hub's training for the disasters, I know that one of the biggest expectations of the disaster hubs is that it's somewhere that's within walking distance, that will have a whiteboard or some physical structure that will say, here's what we know right now. And so if we think about the fact that this is going to be a place where people are going to come and want that information, we can try to design it in a way that we can say, okay, this part of the building will be primarily the focus of a disaster hub, but we'll have this lounge where people can just stay warm and maybe, watch a movie on their DVD, keep the old technology around. Any other comments or questions? Okay, yes, Jake, just unmute yourself. Thank you.
I'm just thinking that I was wondering how this would fit in as we're starting to look at what the new building would look like. It sounds to me like the timing of this is pretty great for that neither of them is going to would set back the other, that this is where we should be right now. And it's pretty wonderful to me that this is the opportunity that's coming up right now, because I have always loved thinking about the new building as being, I didn't call it a resilience hub, but that's what it would be. It's where we all know we can go and be together regardless of what the issue is.
Mhm.
Am I right? The timing of this is good?
Yes, I think so. And the other thing, I want to thank Anne for being, keeping us clued in about the fact that this designation, which is somewhat new, right, Consuelo? I think that the idea of thinking beyond disaster hubs is relatively fresh.
Yeah, it is relatively fresh, and the definition of it morphs and changes every single day. But I think that that's the best possible scenario because everyone is redefining it as they need it, as they want it, as they see it and envision it. And certainly because it's different from, like a disaster shelter, we could have in this project made that for just a catastrophic event, but came the issue of who's going to maintain that? How fast will it go obsolete? There are so many questions about that. And so we expanded it to think about it from a year-round situation. And then as we have been learning more and more, the different needs of every different community, we have expanded the definitions that could be for everybody. And one of the biggest goals of this project is everything that we have created for this project, all the templates and everything, is on our dashboard so that it can be replicable anywhere.
That's great. And I do know that we are taking advantage of that for sure. And one of the things that we have learned in the process is that the biggest success or the biggest indicator of success, or at least return after a disaster is the strength of that community. And you can build it in advance, and that will make it so that you can react that much faster. So having the center of the disaster hub and the resilience hub overlap, I hope will be beneficial for our community. Thank you, Consuelo. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate your time. I learned a lot, and I will continue to learn a lot. I know that somebody from Consuelo's team is going to do a page turn, a look through of the plans that we have been creating with Winslow Architects, and give us some notes about how we might be able to integrate things before we actually start to get to where the electrical lines and the plumbing are going to go, to think about exactly the kinds of things we've been talking about today. With that, have a lovely afternoon, and I appreciate the information. If you're interested in more, for sure, reach out to the Senior Community Center, and we'll be glad to share our work with